Hi.
Hello.
What's up?
I'm Ethan.
I'm Jonathan.
And this is This and That, a comparison podcast, episode 3. In this show, we take general concepts, ideas, movies, really anything under the sun, and just compare and contrast them. Our first two episodes were Star Wars 4 and Star Wars 7, and, what was the other one we did? What was the other one? Apple and Samsung. That was it.
Yeah.
And we just kind of compared those those 4 concepts in separate episodes. You should go back and check those out. But in this episode 3, we're comparing two things that are a little more abstract, and I'd say a little more
deep thinking.
Yeah, a little more serious. Something to really dig our teeth into. Justice and revenge. This is something that I don't know. In many ways, if you kind of boil it down, justice kind of defines your entire worldview. I would say it's almost the basis of where you stand in politics, ethics, morality, and what kind of movies you enjoy.
Yeah,
that too,
definitely.
as well. So this is a little bit of more hardcore podcast, something that's a little harder to dig into. Justice and revenge. It's the distinction between these two concepts, I think, is something that's arguably the building block for how you shape your philosophy. Real question, when does merited justice turn into unmerited payback and revenge? Where's the line that you cross there? I think it's a very difficult question to tackle, but it's kind of a facet of philosophy that's been commonly explored in a lot of movies. Like we say, you see revenge in a lot of movies like Django Unchained, John Wick, and Deadpool. That'd most likely be seen as revenge, I'd imagine. Have you seen Django Unchained at any point? But
I have not.
You've probably seen John Wick and
Deadpool.
And then justice can be seen in like a lot of different movies, like superhero films. I was thinking like Die Hard. That one's a little
Any
bit
crime show
ever, really. And most video games, I would say, as well, where you're supposed to be playing as this heroic dude taking out all the baddies. It ought to be interesting to cover. So here's the general format for our show. If you're new, we take two concepts. In the first part of the show, we explore the one concept. In the second part, we explore the second concept. And then we compare and contrast the two. The weird thing is that for this episode, I think we should stray from that format a little bit because inherently you can't talk about revenge without without leaning on justice, because in a way it's kind of just a perverted sense of justice. So
I agree.
I don't think we're going to have the third section of the podcast where we compare and contrast the two. I think that's just kind of going to pop up naturally over the course of the conversation.
This is going to be our first podcast. It's just kind of on a whim and more from the heart, I guess.
Yeah, I wrote a lot of notes for it like a couple weeks back or so, but for the most part, I think we're just kind of going to stray from it on our own. One disclaimer that I think is really, really important to bring up. Both Jonathan and I come from very, very conservative Christian backgrounds, and I think that is going to be apparent throughout the course of the conversation. In many ways, that's going to affect, and I would say even shape, our philosophies and how we're going to discuss this general concept, justice and revenge. That said, I would like to explore the concept from as many different angles as possible and try to, kind of step back and take more of, not objective, I don't think it's possible to be really truly objective. Never. I don't want to make that claim, but, look at it from as many lenses as possible. You kind of agree there that that's the best way to approach it?
We're going to try and be unbiased, but we're human, and this is a podcast that we created to express our feelings on certain topics.
Yeah, absolutely.
So obviously that's going to show, but we will try and come at this from different angles.
And if you agree with us fundamentally on anything that we say, please comment. I'm kind of interested in starting a discussion or a conversation.
Even if you disagree.
Yes, honestly, if you disagree, if you're offended by anything we say.
If anyone is even watching this.
Yeah, if anyone's even watching.
Just comment, please.
Just comment. Say something. Even if you think that we suck, which is probably likely. Regardless, let's get into this. Enough rambling about this.
For sure.
So like I said earlier, you can't really talk about revenge without first mentioning justice. Justice, I think most people hear that word and think about it in the context of punishment, retribution, or correction. This can be applied to anything from criminals or children or even entire countries after a war.
Yeah.
Most people think of justice as the idea that it's, punishing your children after they've done something wrong. just punishment in general.
Yeah.
The reality is a little different, actually. It's not just solely punishment. There are two facets to this. The actual definition of justice is a little bit broader than that. Not to pull out a definition or something, but here's the definition. It's from Merriam-Webster. Justice is the maintenance or administration of what is just, especially by the impartial adjustment of conflicting claims or the assignment of merited rewards or punishments. So it mentions at one point in that definition the word just, and in order to really pick it apart, you kind of have to define what just means. So I looked up the definition of just. It just means based on or behaving according to what is morally right and fair. Which, that's another difficult idea to get into right there. What is morally right and fair is kind of at the heart of justice. You can't.
But it also is based on your religious views, your political views.
Yes.
How you were raised in your family.
Everything factors into how you perceive justice.
Or even morality.
Yes, exactly.
Which is the foundation of being just or having justice.
I think that's something we're going to dive into a little bit later. But the point is that the main thing I'm trying to emphasize here, justice stems from what is just or fair, correct? It seems a moral or legal rule set that someone either breaks or conforms to. But beyond that as well, justice is not just a negative thing. It can be rewards. It can just be seen as the consequences of doing something either right or wrong. It's a form of, payment, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
If you contribute, you're going to get something good. If you don't contribute, you're going to be punished.
And that is just.
Yes, and that's the way justice works. So, yeah, it's a dual-sided thing. Where does this rule set stem from? The rule set that we use to define justice. That's kind of the golden question, I'd say. It can come from a number of different places. One or many deities in the case of religion, whether that be Christian or Islamic or any number of other religions. It can come from an idea of self-enlightenment or spiritual peace, as is in New Age or postmodern religion. It could be from society or government, as in the case of the more atheistic viewpoint. The point is that if you don't have a rule set, then you don't have any grounds to claim what is fair or right, and you don't have any basis of justice. If you don't have a solid rock foundation there, you're not going to be able to make any sort of claim that, what that guy did, stealing, it's wrong.
Definitely, because then, how do you know it's wrong? What causes you to say that something is unjust?
Exactly.
You have to have a point of view on different issues.
Mm-hmm, exactly. Now, when I was kind of planning this episode out, I feel like it's a little difficult to structure it because I feel like the best way to think about it, the different ways that you can approach justice, is in kind of like a grid format. Up here in the columns at the top, try to keep my hand in the frame. Up here in the columns, you have the many different kind of fundamental worldviews. Like there's traditional Christianity right here, Islam, Buddhism, progressivism, atheism. And then on the left side, or on the rows over here to the left, you have the different types of perceived justice. And I looked up a few of these. There's need-based justice, which is the idea that each person is entitled to different needs. There's justice as equality, which believes that all humans should be given the same resources. There's merit-based, which believes that each person is entitled to what they obtained themselves and nothing more. And those three right there, if you line those up with like the fundamental worldview beliefs, you're going to get a different response from each person and how they feel about that particular type of justice. There's also retributive justice, which believes that those who cause harm to others must be dealt the same amount of harm in return. There's welfare maximization, which believes that there's no good in vindictively causing pain to wrongdoers, but some form of punishment should still be required, such as rehabilitation. This is what you see whenever, some guy is let out of jail temporarily to go do volunteer service, right? Mm-hmm. And then there's restorative justice, which I think is traditional. I don't know, in like Old Testament Christianity, the idea that you must right your wrongs. So the idea that if you murder someone, then you must be killed yourself, or if you steal someone's chicken, then you got to repay their chicken, however that works. Anyway, depending on which system of justice or which idea of justice that you select from this selection of rows over here, and the fundamental worldview on the top, you're going to get a different response from each person. For example, I would say that the traditional Christian would look at the idea of justice as equality and say, well, that's stupid. That we not each person is entitled to obtain what something that they never earned in the first place. I think that that's what a traditional conservative would say. Meanwhile, you present that to like a progressive person, and they would say, well, yeah, okay, each person should be entitled to the exact same amount of resources. Where we're going to get those resources is the problem, but that's the goal that we should be striving towards. It's really up to interpretation. And there are so many different interpretations that's where politics comes in, and it gets really, really messy. It's again, it's really, really difficult to tackle because there's just so many different ideas and beliefs coming at it from so many different angles.
Which is why this is going to be a very free-flowing podcast episode.
Yes, definitely, for sure. Now, I don't know if you've ever heard of this before. There's this big topic of contention in the politosphere called social justice, which, depending on who you ask, will either call it horse crap or the fundamental bedrock of what we should consider justice. I'm not sure where I fall on this, but social justice. Let's hear it out real quick. Social justice is the idea... Social justice stems from this idea of positive rights and negative rights. The idea of positive rights stems from a place of entitlement. It says that each human has a basic right to certain things, food, water, shelter, and other basic human needs, even if you don't have the means to obtain them. You can see this actually pretty commonly in a court of trial, where you are entitled legally to a lawyer, even if you can't pay for one yourself. That's written in the Constitution. You can't change that. Negative rights, meanwhile, insist a separation from obligated assistance. No one is allowed to stop you from pursuing your needs, but on the flip side, they're not obligated to help you. So this is, this is something that's kind of in contrast to positive rights, where it's saying that a governing force is not entitled to give you your food, but on the flip side, they're not entitled to help you in any way whatsoever. But on the flip side, you're free. You're freer. You're considered to not be perturbed by them or, messed with in any way whatsoever. Yeah. And yeah, you constantly see this kind of push and pull between negative and positive rights, not only in the political sphere, but I think that there's a certain degree of truth to both parts.
Definitely, yeah.
Because it's hard to say that any human being is not entitled or shouldn't have access to basic rights like food and water. But it's also hard to say that they are entitled to any more than that. Yeah. So it's kind of a spectrum there. How do you feel about that? The idea of positive versus negative rights?
I feel like it's hard because while yes, every human is entitled to food, water, shelter, other basic human needs, at the same time we can't force those upon people. If they don't want those things, they don't have to have them. There's another flip side though, to where we, as also being humans, don't have an obligation to give those to people. They have a right to them, but whose right is it to give it to them?
Yeah,
it's their right to obtain it.
Well, yeah, it implies some sort of an imposition on or an obligation for others to rise up and account for your, for lack of a better term, not your responsibility, but for account for what you don't have. Yeah. And that idea that someone else is going to pay for what you don't have is a little bit, assuming, I guess. That said, I would also say that, water and food are somehow, in some way, human rights, and that's something that we should be accounted for, whether that be by a higher force, governing force, or a food bank. There are plenty of food banks around. But anyway, you constantly see this idea of push and pull between positive and negative rights. And that's the idea that some would argue that positive rights include compensating a person for harms or wrongdoings against their ancestors. Others would say that's unfair. That's where the idea of social justice, or the argument of social justice, comes from. So, more specifically, social justice, I think, as it kind of applies to the modern political sense, is in modern America the idea that people who were wronged in the past deserve some sort of compensation for what people in the past did to other people. I'm not explaining this very well, but
I think what you're trying to say is that social justice is, well, it can be depending on who you are. It can be a sense of if your ancestors were done wrong in the past, that you should get compensation for that.
Mm-hmm.
Some viewpoints think that's correct. Some viewpoints think that that is incorrect, that it's unfair, that your ancestors messed up or were treated wrongly, so now you need to be treated right. Some viewpoints feel that, your ancestors were treated wrongly, so what? Make it right yourself. That's not our issue. That was our ancestors too. Our ancestors screwed with your ancestors. They should have paid each other back, not me paying you back now.
Mm-hmm.
And there's both sides to that viewpoint.
And obviously, I think the main area of debate in this is as it relates to slavery in the late 19th century, and how social justice relates to that. And whether or not you fall on the for or against social justice, it's definitely it's a very heated argument, and something that you kind of got to walk on eggshells whenever you're talking about in the modern political sense. But regardless of how you feel about social justice, at its core, justice seems to stem from a sense of fairness and unfairness, right and wrong. When there's a disagreement on where that difference between right and wrong lies, justice is really, really hard to enact upon.
So before we get into revenge, a quick synopsis of justice. Justice is not just receiving a punishment for doing something wrong. It can also be rewarded for doing something right.
Yeah, exactly. Now, revenge, as it relates to justice. I found this really cool quote that I kind of like from Sir Francis Bacon, who was some guy, I've heard of him before. But anyway, revenge is kind of a wild justice, which the more man's nature runs to, the more ought law to weed it out. Revenge, to me anyway, is the idea that you're trying to pay back someone in an unjust way. You're paying back injustice with an injustice of your own. Now, where justice should stem from, I don't know. It's a really, really tough one, actually. Many people say that unless if it comes down to authority, right? Like, if someone did wrong to you and you pay them back by doing wrong to them, that is revenge. If you go and report to an authority and they enact revenge on them, then that's justice. Then again, I've done
That is a very biblical worldview, though.
Yeah, I'd say so. Then again, I've done stuff like that in the past where my sister has done something wrong to me, and I go to take it to my parents about it, even though I really couldn't have, and I kind of could have just overlooked it. But because I wanted to get revenge on her, I went to my parents, I went to an authority, and I told them, hey, you should go punish her. And they did. Is that justice or is that revenge? I could have overlooked it, but I chose not to, right?
I feel like it depends on
the situation.
The situation and the authority you go to.
Right.
If they are smart about it, they will take into account both sides. I feel like that's what judges do in America. I feel like that's what a judge is supposed to do. They don't just take one person's word for it and punish someone because of it. Because, like you're saying, that can still be revenge and not justice. So what you're supposed to do as a judge or as an appointed authority, you are supposed to take in the story from both sides and be a neutral deciding factor on who was right and who was wrong, and that turns into justice.
Mm-hmm.
It is revenge if you do it from your heart to get someone in trouble, and whoever the authority you take it to does not take into account the other person who you are snitching on, I guess you could call it. I feel like that would be revenge.
Real quick, I know you haven't seen the movie before. I'll try and explain as best I can, but there's this movie called Die Hard. It's pretty famous. It talks about these terrorists that get into a building, and there's this guy named John McClane. He's a police cop, and he manages to slink away right before the terrorists find him. And throughout the course of the movie, he is finding ways to sneak around the building and kill all the terrorists before they're able to hurt anybody. And naturally, the thing is that he's operating outside of the law. Of course, he's not taking them to a court of trial. But the thing is, in that sort of situation, is it really possible to take them to a court of trial? It's not. The best thing to do in that sort of situation is what he does and kills them all eventually, before they're able to hurt anybody else. There is no sort of contact with the authorities whatsoever. Eventually the police do arrive, but that's out of his priority, that's out of his concern. And still yet, I would say that is a form of justice. But how? Why? I realize it's a fictional movie, of course, but I think it's a good talking point regardless.
It makes me bring up the question, is there maybe something we're missing here? What if, obviously I haven't seen the movie, maybe I'm missing something, but could it be something besides justice or revenge? Would it be considered self-defense? Is that something that's different? Or not self-defense itself, but the idea that you are defending yourself from a harm. What would that be classified as? Justice or revenge?
Wow, that's a really good point. Well, from self-harm, I would consider that justice. I don't know. Me personally, anyway.
If it truly is
acting out of a sense of, I don't know, priority or, self-preservation, and saying, hey, this guy is going to kill me. So out of a sense of, I don't know, pre-revenge, like he hasn't done anything to you yet in this situation, but he's about to kill you and you're not going to be able to.
And if you give him the chance, there's no way to enact justice.
And in this specific situation of Die Hard, the terrorists are about to kill a bunch of people outside of John McClane.
That would be justice.
Yeah, that would be justice. They haven't killed anyone yet, though. They do throughout the course of the movie, but at the beginning of the movie, they haven't killed anybody, right? And then he starts slinking around and figuring out a way to kill them without going to the authorities again. So if our idea of going to the authorities as being a method of justice kind of falls through in this point, because what he's doing is not revenge. I can just say that 100% confidently. It's not revenge.
Well, I think we can bring up, I agree, it's not revenge. But I think we can bring up, this is a pretty conservative view, but I'm not using it to promote conservative views.
Okay, sure.
I'm just using it as an example. Something you see a lot in the news is police officers shooting people before the officer is harmed.
Right.
And that brings up the same question. If let's say you're a police officer, and someone is coming at you with a knife, and you have a gun pointed at them. When they start running at you, do you shoot them before they stab you, or do you shoot them after they've stabbed you once? Personally, from my conservative view, I'd say shoot them before they stab you once.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure how everyone else in the world feels, but if you apply that to the Die Hard situation, or Justice and Revenge, which we're comparing, I feel like him to say, if he was to give it a second thought and say, it was what I'm doing here right, is this justice or revenge? By then, everyone's dead. Then there's no point. Who cares if it's justice or revenge? Everyone's dead. You're dead. What do you care? So I feel like in that situation, you act before they act.
Yeah.
Or as a lot of people in the military say, shoot first, ask questions later.
I feel like the idea of Maybe we could call that like contemplative revenge, like, or preemptive revenge, preemptive justice. Maybe that's going off on a bit of a tangent because we're trying to distinguish between justice and revenge here specifically. So in that specific situation, what is he revenging or what is he committing justice for? What is he enacting justice on? I guess it is the idea that
the well-being of others.
Yeah, violation, or potentially someone is potentially about to violate someone's safety and their right to live, and he is preemptively enacting justice on them by saying, hey, no, that's not right, so I'm going to repay you back by killing you, by actually killing you when you were only threatening to kill them and potentially were about to kill them. It's a weird deal.
It's very deep. It really makes you think.
Exactly. And I think the weird thing about it is I don't know if there necessarily is a hard set in stone line between justice and revenge. Maybe it's just impossible to look at, I don't know, a broad spectrum of situations and say, this is where you have crossed the line from justice into revenge. I don't know.
I think something we need to take into account is people's heart.
Yeah, and their intentions, right?
Yeah.
If Bruce Willis or John McClane in that movie was going after Hans Gruber, who is the villain, specifically because, I don't know, Hans Gruber killed John McClane's wife, hypothetically, and Hans Gruber was no longer a threat anymore, and John McClane could have gone to the authorities, but instead he wanted to kill him himself. That would be considered revenge, right?
Yeah.
That would be considered revenge because of his intention, I suppose. But then again, if Hans Gruber were a threat to more people aside from his wife, then maybe it wouldn't be revenge, it would be justice.
It also depends on how John McClane's... Like I just said, it depends on his heart behind it.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what the situation is, if he is just purely out of anger wanting to kill this guy because he threatened them, I would consider that revenge. If his heart is truly, oh my goodness, people are going to die, I need to stop this guy, I'd consider that justice.
Sense of obligation, kind of,
yeah.
More than anything. Yeah, that's interesting.
But that brings up another point that it's almost impossible, I guess. Mm-hmm. If you truly think about it in its deepest form, unless you can read somebody's mind, how do you know whether they're doing justice or revenge?
Yeah, it's impossible. Now, I want to ask this: what's wrong with revenge? What's wrong with the general idea of revenge?
The general idea of revenge?
Yeah.
From a biblical standpoint, in the Bible, God says that He has all revenge and wrath, or something like that. I'd have to look up the exact verse. But if we look at it from what everyone in the world, on average, would view it as, would be to say that revenge is wrong. Yeah, that's a difficult one. Revenge is wrong because...
it's repaying... I would say it's because it's repaying an injustice with another injustice.
Yes.
Instead of an injustice with a justice.
I agree with that. I also think that it's something that obviously not everyone would agree, but revenge is something that you take upon yourself. When justice is a joint idea. A lot of people have to agree on justice.
That's a good point, yeah.
Take a view from the president. If the president just says, okay, this is wrong, blah, 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 punish this person for it, I guess in a way you could view that as revenge.
Mm-hmm.
But the president doesn't do that. He has to go to the cabinet or like a board for the United States to say, okay, what does everyone collectively think here is right and wrong?
Okay.
But that's also democracy.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't agree with democracy.
In this hypothetical situation, let's assume that his cabinet and the Supreme Court and the House of Representatives are all corrupt. They've all been bribed. And they all disagree with the president, and they all think that the guy should be set free. Does that make him still... and if he still does that, does that make it revenge? assuming that he's right in this situation and the guy should have been punished, does the fact that he has not been validated by other people make it revenge?
Well, that's hard to say, because what do you consider corrupt? Is corrupt doing wrong in the eyes of what is morally right for Christians, or is corrupt doing what is wrong morally in the eyes of Muslims? Or is corrupt doing...
Gosh, man. It's so complicated.
We shouldn't have done this topic.
Go back. Well, regardless, it's really just a hard line to settle on, I'd say. At the end of the day, maybe it's just that revenge is easy to point down by how you feel at the end of it. Because revenge is oftentimes, I think it's something that's not admirable, but it's satisfying to watch from afar. Oh, yeah. And that's what makes, movies like Deadpool or John Wick just so fun to watch, because
it's bittersweet.
It's bittersweet. Yeah, they could go to the authorities and talk about it, but the fact that they're taking this guy out himself is just...
it's wrong.
It's wrong.
Man, it feels so
but
good.
Man, he really had it coming to him. He really had it coming to him. Yeah. So, I don't know.
Something else that's...
But sorry. I was saying it feels so good, satisfying in the moment, or to watch from afar in a fictional setting, but rarely at the end of it is it actually worth it.
That's what I was about to say. If you truly take revenge, feels nice because it's upon you, you got to do it, and what if the authorities don't take care of it right? That's where revenge feels nice. I did what I know, what I think I know is right. Mm-hmm. If I take them to the authorities, they might let him go. But at the same time, revenge is on the bitter side to say, wow, that was really selfish. I took that upon myself. I have the conscience to say, I did that to that person. I'm the one who caused them this pain and turmoil. No matter what they did to you, I feel like if you're a decent human being, you're always going to feel that sense of...
emptiness.
Yeah.
At the end of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good way to phrase it, I'd say. Emptiness at the end of revenge. Yeah, it's tough.
Just like how empty this conclusion is.
No. No. I have one more question.
Okay.
I brought up the idea of positive rights and negative rights earlier, right?
Yes.
I wonder if it's possible to have positive justice and negative justice. Okay, here's how I mean.
Okay.
Positive revenge and negative revenge. So, I guess both. I don't know. The idea of justice is that it can go two ways, right? You're either rewarded for doing right things, or you're punished for doing bad things, right? What if, and revenge is the idea that you are going above and beyond justice, or you're taking justice into your own hands, or you're going outside of what you should be doing to enact justice. And that can be applied to negative justice, I suppose, where you are repaying someone's negative with your own negative, right? I wonder if you can do that the reverse way with a positive, where someone did something wrong to you in the past, and they repay you above and beyond what they should. I don't know if that makes any sense. Like a form of overcompensation, right?
Oh,
like a form of overcompensation by saying, "Hey, I did wrong to you. I stole, I don't know, $100 from you. Let me pay you back by giving you $1 million." Well, at that point, okay, that's fine, I guess. But is this really justice? Is this really fair if they're getting $1 million back? I don't know. It's just a cool idea I had in my head. Maybe, I don't think that's really a form of revenge, but it's kind of the opposite of revenge, right? It's overcompensation. I don't know if it's necessarily even unadmirable, but maybe it's not fair.
I would say that it's maybe not the right word for it, but almost it's very prideful, I would say.
How so?
To say that, oh, I did wrong by you by stealing $100. I could give you back $100 and we'd be even, but I'm so much better than that. I'm going to give you $1 million.
Mm-hmm. Well,
but that also takes into account your heart. Are you really just that? Because if you're really just that sorry about it, like, oh my goodness, it also depends on how it affects you.
Mm-hmm.
if somebody steals $100 from you for a week, you didn't have anything going on that week, no big deal. You get the $100 back, fine. Somebody steals that $100 from you, and you end up not being able to pay for a medical bill for your child, and they die, and all this different stuff happens.
Mm-hmm.
Then is it fine to give him $1 million? I'd say so. If that many it depends on the repercussions that were caused by your wrongdoing,
Mm-hmm.
and how much you should repay. If somebody steals my water and I'm not able to drink water, obviously this is an extreme case, and I'm not able to drink water, I don't know, I get liver disease or something from it, then should they just say, oh, sorry, here's some more water? Well, no, my liver's screwed up because you stole my water. Pay for all my medical bills.
But then what if they pay for all your medical bills and then buy you a mansion? I don't know if it really applies, because they would just be doing that out of the goodness of... Assumedly, they would be doing that out of the goodness of their heart, and they'd be saying, hey, I really, really wronged you, so I'm going to really, really right you. The question is not, is that a cool thing to do? Obviously, it's a cool thing to do. If you want to give above and beyond, then yeah, of course. Go the extra mile, of course. But is it fair? Is it expected? No, not even is it expected. Is it fair?
Is it fair?
Yeah, is it fair to pay someone back way, 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 way above what they actually deserved?
Depends on what you classify as fair. I don't know. That's difficult.
Maybe this ties into the idea of social justice as well. Like we said, paying someone's descendants back for how an ancestor was wronged. Is that overcompensation? Is that taking things into account that maybe shouldn't be? Is that really fair? I don't know. I don't know what to say in that case. If the ancestor was wronged, if the ancestor was, for the point of conversation, put into slavery, that ruined the ancestor's life, which in turn ruined their son's life and their son's life and their son's life. And now we're in the 21st century, and their son is in the slumps because of something that happened way back when, and something that their family has never been able to break out of. Should there be some form of justice there?
My conservative viewpoint says, why didn't one of the sons just turn around and change it? I mean, it's also social justice. We're not expected to pay you back, but you have the right to make it right yourself.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Why not face adversity and make yourself better from it?
Then again, they never would have been in that situation if it weren't for what happened 150 years ago. Yeah. Then again, who's going to pay them back? Because the ancestors aren't around anymore to pay them back. There's an argument that can be made both ways. It's just really, really tough to approach it. And I guess maybe that's the sense of, is that like a sense of reverse revenge, or is it justice? I don't know. I'm not an expert on this stuff. I just think it's an interesting talking point, and I'm only 18. Get off my back. But
well, I think that'd be something good if anybody does watch this this far.
Yeah.
Put it down in the comments, and we would be more than happy to discuss it.
Yes,
and
have a
hear
conversation.
Your point of views.
Yes,
because this is something that we're not sure on. So
absolutely, yeah, it's something I want to talk about with anyone that is willing to have a legitimate conversation and not call us out for anything. I mean, well, no, you can call us out for stuff. Just don't be a jerk about it. How about that, huh? I don't know what I'm saying.
Don't be a jerk.
Don't be a jerk. This is slowly devolving over time. Yeah. But anyway, that's Justice and Revenge. The conclusion? We don't really know. It's
I don't think we can come to a conclusion.
I don't think so at all.
Yet. At least not with the information that we have in this world.
No.
Currently, I don't think that we can come to a good conclusion.
I agree.
Which I feel like is pretty cool. I enjoy that aspect. That there's always going to be a debate about it. There's always going to be an opportunity to express your opinions to someone. There's always going to be an opportunity for a debate. There's always going to be an opportunity for a talking point. And I like that.
The bottom line is, regardless of how you feel about justice or social justice, or where the line between justice and revenge is be nice about it. Be a considerate human being. Whether you believe with someone's political or philosophical ideologies or not, like, be reasonable and hear someone out if they're not being a jerk themselves. I guess that's the point.
If they're being a jerk, then serve them some justice.
Well, even then, I would say try and be as nice as possible, and repay. It's better to pay a kindness with an injustice with kindness than nothing at all, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. Regardless, this be nice to each other, be excellent to each other, dudes, and party on.
Because you're breathtaking.
You're breathtaking. Keanu Reeves is the best. And with that, this concludes our Keanu Reeves podcast. Thank you very much for tuning in. No, this is This and That podcast about comparison. Jonathan, what should we talk about next time? I feel like we were about to talk about a certain video game series made by a very influential PC developer who shall remain nameless. But we might do something else entirely. I'm not sure.
I wouldn't mind doing the video games we were thinking about.
Sure.
Which you guys will see in the next episode.
Speaking of justice, we're just gonna keep on hitting hard with the really philosophical, deep conversations, and just move on to video games. That's what we're gonna do. So, anyway,
until we get famous, and then we're gonna quit like every YouTuber ever.
Yes. That said, we quit. Have an excellent afternoon.